to Excite Media's new program. Well, good morning, Kicksters. Welcome to the Thursday edition of The Kick. And how does it feel to be called a Kickster? Do you think it's going to take off? Probably not. Anyway, we're here. We're going to be talking about all things branding on The Kick. Really great that we've got the creative director of Excite Media, Ben Maynard, who's going to be coming in to talk about actually what should a small business consider when you're looking at your brand identity. And hey, what is a brand identity? Sounds like a new kind of passport. We'll work that one out shortly. It's been really exciting over the last few weeks. I don't know what you feel like if you're outside of Queensland. Probably right across Australia, you've had a few of these, but we've had Easter weekends giving us a couple of short weekends, and then we've had Anzac Day, and in Queensland, we've got Labor Day just around the corner. So suddenly you've lost a day out of each week, and it feels like we're catching up. But on top of that, we normally get about 10 to 20 inquiries a week, and in the last couple of days, about 20 a day. So there's still a lot of avid interest in businesses getting their positioning right and making sure that they're presenting their brand well online. We realize that's where we live, and we're so used to looking at websites day in and day out for the things that we're looking for. So it's important to have our business consistently looking good online as well. So great to have you with The Kick. Let's get some expert opinion on what we can do in terms of some of these different digital marketing services. And that's what your Excite Media team is here for. If you ever want to know about websites, search engine optimization, and of course, branding, get on the phone and have a chat to us, or go to excitemedia.com.au, and we'd love to have a talk to you about those things. But first of all, I want to introduce our creative director, and it's Ben Maynard. Welcome to The Kick. How you doing, my man?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Now, I just feel a little bit awkward there that I've gone and put that wonderful Australian Web Award right pointing at your guitar, taking that out of the picture. We should fix that in a moment. But let's get to know, Ben, you've been with the Excite Media for some time. Like, I've been there 8 years, but you were there before me. You're helping from down the coast. How long have you been involved with the crew?
Yeah, I think I've been with the company for about nearly 10 years, 9 or 10 years all up. I started freelancing from northern New South Wales in 2012, I think it was. And just working with Chris online and doing the design work. And then in 2014, made the decision to move the family up to Brisbane. And haven't looked back. So I've been in-house now for, I think, coming up to, this is my 8th year. So it's been good.
That is so funny. In-house during the last 2 years. You've been in your own house for the last 2 years.
In my own house, yeah, that's right.
And tell me about your background, though, because we draw on you for all of your expertise and design, and whether it's logos or getting the right structure of a website, or we've got some incredibly unusual projects from time to time. Where did that life begin, playing with the graphic design programs and the love of design?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story. I played professionally music for the first kind of 10 years of my working life. And when I kind of moved into a place down in Brisbane here, I bought a computer designed for recording. So I wanted to get into that kind of stuff. I worked in a recording studio when I was a fair bit younger. And then I started playing around with Photoshop and kind of realized it was the same kind of scratching the same kind of itches as doing the music. So the creative thing was, starting with a blank canvas and, having a brief and being able to kind of make something was really similar. So they kind of got into that, and I got my first job doing graphic design stuff. And then I left that and started freelancing and started my own company for about 10 or 15 years, just kind of work out of my bedroom. So COVID's not a big departure for me. Back to the old days. Had a company, and we did pretty well. And so I learned a lot about what not to do in business during those times. I worked for different people and spending a lot of my own money on ideas that didn't work. So it's kind of, back at the time, it was painful, but now it's quite good to have that under your belt.
Are you allowed to name drop a few of the kind of either clients or businesses you've worked with in the past?
Yeah, I actually worked for they were very small at the time, a couple out of Santa Cruz, Shane and Peter. So they initially kicked off and they started Modern Tribe. So through those guys, I got to work with Seagate and eBay and all those kind of big names. The people who funded WordPress for the first time and Shopify. So a lot of big guys early on, which was an eye-opening experience. very different world when you're dealing with corporate design. In that you'd think it'd be very bespoke, but it was very kind of a shotgun approach to design. Here's 5 great sites. Copy these ones. I mean, at the high level, they were really just stealing work from other people. In a good way. Inspiration. So that was good. It was a good, I guess, trial by fire to work out how big business works. And we're talking about style guides here with 200. I think we did one for SAP. The style guide was 298 pages of things you cannot do. So when you've got to negotiate design in that world, it's quite tricky.
I worked with a regional council who will remain nameless, and it was a 300-page style guide. You think, how do you actually manage it? But listen, I want to go into the technology space just for a moment. When you're doing graphic design in the early days, or even the studio work, you had big computers, right? But now you're doing everything on a Mac, and it's just like you're carrying the powerhouse around. How big a computer did you have in the old days?
Yeah, it was a massive thing because everything, there's no really dedicated chipsets back then for doing these tasks. So, there was graphics cards originally, but most of it was onboard chips for the graphics. And same with the music. Everything we do now is in a box that's separate to the computer, so it does all the processing itself, and the laptop just kind of handles the laptop business. But yeah, back in the days, they were like turbines, just incredible power sapping things.
And we use them to heat us in the cold of winter to keep us going.
Absolutely.
Now, we've got rid of that silly Australian Web Award that was covering up the guitar, and you mentioned music before. What part does music play in your life these days?
Yeah, I've kind of got back into it in the last couple of years. As I said, I've been playing, live gigs for most of my life, and it's a very important part. So I play guitar mainly, but kind of dabble in other instruments, and I like writing and recording, stuff like that. So actually, I'm doing a few projects at the moment. I've got a live duo that I do with another guy, Brendan, and his band, and then a whole bunch of more bands that I can care to name. But it just keeps that creative stuff going in the off hours, which is really good.
Do you need a band called The Usual Suspects?
I do.
So if we look at your work with Excite Media, what would you say is what you actually contribute? And don't get into crayons and things. What do you actually bring to the table, helping our team accomplish the goals that we're doing at Excite?
Yeah, I guess my role as creative director is to oversee the output of what happens. So, and try to deliver the best looking websites, but also with a really huge business focus. That's one real difference about Excite Media than other places. And I suppose more advertising. How can I explain it? More visually focused businesses. Everything we do is based on data and backed up by actual results. So while it is my job to make sure everything looks good, if it looks good but doesn't perform, then I haven't done my job properly. So there's a lot of thinking that goes in behind the scenes. We do a lot of our interaction with clients live one-on-one, whether it's in a room or over Zoom. So, for example, one big change from us to other agencies is that we will do our design meetings live. So we'll actually pull up the design, and we can move stuff around, change the colors, and we just find having that conversation, person to person, is much easier than choosing a blue over email, which is as ridiculous as it sounds. So if you can sit in the room and say, okay, well, that's add a bit more red. Okay, that's perfect. And if you can make the client feel comfortable with those decisions. And they've tried all the other options, because that's one thing that really that clients really push back on, is they feel like they're locked into an idea. They have to make a decision, and then we're going to choose that purple. And interesting, we're talking about branding today, because that's that kind of lasts for a long time. If you choose a purple for your logo, that's your purple for 5 to 10 years. So it's helpful to be able to choose that with them and have a look at a few options, and then kind of come to that decision in a more organic way than just here's 3 colors, choose one. So,
and listen, this is what we want to talk about today, because it's not unusual that everybody's got a business idea they wish they had the guts to launch. And whether it's sitting around with a few beers on a weekend and thinking, I wish I could get that business off the ground, whether it's your passion for cars or your passion for going and starting your own version of the place that you're employed in. The funny thing is, the first thing we think about doing is coming up with a logo. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's kind of the thing that solidifies the idea in people's minds. It's it makes it real, number one. So if you start getting some collateral together, then it's an actual thing rather than just a chat. It's a bit of a slippery slope though, because while the brand logo is an important part, you don't want to. We've all heard those stories where people get the business cards printed, all that stuff printed before the actual idea is ready to go. So you can't shortcut that process. Make sure it's you do the research and the due diligence on the actual concept. But yeah, it's a great way to get in-house investment in the idea as well. We always talk a lot about logos being customer focused, but they're also very internally focused. So when you join a company, and we'll talk about this, I guess, with the brand identity stuff, it's really the personality of the business. It's not just, it's obviously it's their font and their color and that kind of stuff, the visual brand, but it's also how they interact with their clients, how you feel about it. So having that buy-in for an early stage startup of, here's our brand, here's our package, you can really kind of get buy-in with people joining the team. So I think that's a really, that's why a lot of people lean on it very heavily in startups.
You've done a really good job of kind of painting a picture of what a brand actually is, because we think of it as being the logo.
Yeah.
But how would you describe a brand in its wholeness, if you can put it that way?
Yeah, a logo is just a part of it. I mean, they're often interchangeable in the conversation, the brand and the logo. The brand is much more. It's obviously the visual representation, because why that's important, especially in the buying phase, the early stage. That's often the only thing that you leave with the customer when they're trying to make a decision. So they might do their research, as they do these days, and the only thing that you actually leave with is, oh, okay, I remember those guys with the red shovel, or the red thing. So having that is very important to make sure that sticks out amongst your competition. If that makes sense. There are other key components of the brand. The brand voice, which is your tone, how you interact with communications with your customers, and it's really, the brand identity is essentially a promise to the customer. Here's how we're going to treat you, and here's what you can expect from us in terms of personality.
I like that. And when it comes to, you say that brand voice, that can affect everything from, you said the type of logo, maybe the fonts. You mentioned whether we're going to go with purple or not. Can you describe how brand identity, this whole wrapped packet, does affect your choice of your font or your color?
Yeah, I guess it's you want to make a logo and a logo as part of a brand that really resonates with the audience that you want to. So, for example, if you are a fun young company, then you want to make sure that your font choices reflect that. Same with the colors too, like vibrant pinks, vibrant reds. And there's all the color theory behind all that, which I think is, I think you can overthink that a little bit. But yeah, the font choice. I mean, for example, if you want to promote a history, or like what am I trying to say? If you're not young and fun, and if you're a bank, for example, you're not seeing banks with kind of curvy Comic Sans fonts. It's all got to sit together. In terms of colors, I think it's another question we get asked is, with the color theory, like, am I allowed to be a bank and not be blue, for example? And that's definitely true. I think sometimes you can't discount that sometimes things just look good. Like, we can make decisions. Getting that buy-in from yourself as a business owner with your logo is also very important.
And it's interesting that brands actually over time become either iconic or trusted. I mean, I often use Coca-Cola's script logo and say, if you were starting a caramel fizzy water drink company today, your graphic design company is unlikely to come up with that script wavy design.
That's
but
right.
now it's just so brilliant because we've had years of exposure to it, which has meant a lot. One of the things I think is really important, that a lot of people who don't know about design, they tend to see space on the page, whether it's a website or otherwise, and they want to fill it. And then we end up with clutter. Can you give us some guidelines so we don't end up with a mess, whether it's on a brochure or a website, some way of stopping the chaos, I guess?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest questions we get asked in web design is, can we squeeze it up and remove the negative space, the white space? And I guess the learning there is that it's as important what's not there as what is there. So, for example, having a single subject in the middle of the page, nicely spaced, gives the eye time to rest. So it'll take in that information, and then before moving directly to the next thing, it's got time to actually have a rest, process the information, then move on. So by removing all the white space, we actually, if we had everything crammed in together, there'd be no actual proper flow. One of the best practical examples of that is when you're looking at sign writing on cars, for example. When you're driving into the office, you'll see on the back of a car, the logo quite big, but then every service they do on the car, 40 or 50 things. Whereas the key takeaway from that is just that chaos rather than, okay, Excite Media, we make websites or whatever, something very simple that's, explains. Communication is the key. And if that's lost because there's not enough space around the elements, then that's a bad choice.
One example I often talk to clients about is that when I'm looking at billboards going down the highway, they might have looked good on the computer screen when they've been built, but they don't look good at 100 kilometers an hour if you can't read them.
That's right, yeah.
So you've got to have that context. So if I'm somebody that's a business owner and somebody wants to get my advice whether I like the graphic design, what do I say? Because sometimes I feel like I've got to have an opinion.
Yeah, I think honesty is the key. It also depends who the stakeholders are too. Like if it's done by somebody or a friend, it's always more difficult to be kind of objective in that situation. I think you've got to look at it in terms of, is it communicating the things that it needs to communicate? As a customer, am I getting the message here? So, for example, a very literal logo for like a house inspection business, doesn't have a house on it. That seems very, very, low rent, but often it's that communication that's very important. Okay, this is a house inspection company. If you're dealing in a space that has a lot of similar brands, how are you going to stick out essentially? How can you still let people know that you do house inspections, but not, you don't fit in with the rest of these, and that's the real trick to it.
What about if I'm going to have a go at doing my own graphic design? We see a lot of tools coming out, whether it's software or online tools like Canva's become very popular. Are there a few things that I should be thinking about so that I don't make a mess of it as well?
Yeah, I think I will jump in. I really like Canva. I mean, it's not probably the thing I should be saying, but it's really great. It's a great tool. Graphic designers are supposed to hate that thing, but yeah, I don't. I think it's excellent. I think overarching is keep it simple. Make sure the message is coming through. The old thing of less is more is very important. So make sure that you use big fonts, as fewer words as possible. So if you're writing a tagline, make sure it says very clearly. Make sure it answers the pain points. So if you've got Brisbane inspections, house inspections for free or something like that, something that really answers what the big objection is. In terms of styling and layout and things like that for graphic design for yourself, keep it simple. That's what I'd say. Make it clear. One or two fonts. I mean, two fonts in a brand is probably one too many. Same thing with if you're doing brochures and things like that. Big, bold choices. One thing that we do see a lot is a lot of people are very into watermarking. So, for example, they'll have like a DL brochure, and then they'll put a photo in the background and then alpha it out so it's only 40%, so it shines through. That it gives you interest, but it also shows a bit of we had to make a compromise in this design here. So if you just deleted that thing, you'd have a much stronger thing. And that's, I guess, one of the key things of design is just keep deleting things until it doesn't say the right message. That's what I would say.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think that's probably a good way to finalise what can I take out and still get the best message forward, as opposed to what can I put in, which would be great. And one of the things I know with Canva is that they have so many templates, thousands and thousands of templates.
Do you work for Canva?
But when it comes to it, I guess we've got to be careful to keep that consistency by not going from one template with fonts and colours to another template with fonts and colours. So maybe it's good for us to document what are our colours and fonts and stick with those.
That's right. Yeah, keep a list of them. And back to what we talked about before with the massive style guides. It doesn't have to be 198 pages, but just so everybody in the company is communicating visually in the same way. This is our company font. This is the minimum size we use it at. This is the green. Because what you'll find is if especially with our brand, like the green is such a strong color. If we all started using subtle variants of the green, then over time that just becomes an absolute mess. So make sure everybody's using the consistent colors, consistent fonts. And same the imagery too. Like it's a massive part. Photography. I can see in the background here. You've got the black and white Excite Media photo, and that's just the theme that we've used for our brand. That generally when we're running it with the green and the logo, we have a black and white photo, just for consistency.
So Ben, if somebody got a logo created by Excite Media, we'd go through the process, get them to a point where they're falling in love with this design, give them the computer files, but we'd give them a brand guidelines document as well. What would they actually get from us?
Well, they actually get a document which specifies all of those things. So it specifies the typeface to use. It will have the regular version, which is, so dark on light. They'll also have an inverted version. So if they want to use it on a dark background. So often if the brand is white logo on a dark background, when you go to do email templates or printouts or anything on paper, it just doesn't work. So we did the invert for them. We'll often get some different alignments too. So for example, if you've got the logo here and the text down below, we'll do a version where it's side by side. So if it has to go on a thin head or something like that. So all the different variations. It's really a blueprint on how to use the logo and kind of not ruin the brand.
Absolutely brilliant. Listen, thanks very much. I know we could go a lot deeper, but you've given us a lot to think about and appreciate your expertise. And if you're watching The Kick at the moment, just know that we've got Ben's talent working with our graphic designers and our website people to ensure that we are creating just what is going to work for your business. And Ben, as you said, it's about improving people's business. And I know that you don't just bring the design. Often it's your words that are helping make sure that the messaging is on point as well. Is that something that you've enjoyed over the years?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite part of it is interacting with businesses and really kind of getting to the key of what their messaging is and understanding their customers. So that's one of the parts of my job that I really enjoy.
Well, if you haven't met Ben, thanks very much for being on The Kick. We're going to be back next week and have a talk to another member of the Excite Media team. So make sure that you're ready to join us and we'll bring you some more expertise to help to grow your business.